I'm Samantha Reed, 30 years old, standing in a Seattle hotel ballroom surrounded by my family's wealth and smug faces. My sister's voice slices through the crowd, sharp as a blade. Still a secretary. Samantha chasing coffee orders all day, her laugh stings eyes glint with mockery and whispers ripple around me. I clench my wine glass, heart-steady lips sealed. They think I'm a nobody shuffling papers at some tech firm. They don't know I'm the CEO of Luminary Labs, and tomorrow I'll sign off on their $50 million deal turning their world upside down. Her smirk fuels me, but I smile back, ready for the moment they'll eat their words. Before I share my story, tell me where you're listening from. Stay silent or wait to turn the tables. Comment below and hit subscribe to see what happens. The gala last night wasn't the first time my family tore me down. 8 years ago at 22, I stood in our family's Seattle penthouse, thinking I could change their minds. I clutched a stack of slides, heart racing. My idea was simple: a startup using AI to help small businesses cut costs and grow. I'd spent months on it, market research prototypes, a 5-year plan. The Reeds were gathered, sipping wine, their faces smug. My sister was the first to speak. AI Samantha, that's a pipe dream. Angela sneered, her voice dripping with pity. Laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. My father didn't even look up from his phone. If you want work, I'll get you a desk job at Carter Investments, Raymond said, waving me off. My mother, Carol, chimed in, her tone cold. Samantha, you're not cut out for this. Angela's already climbing the ladder at the firm. Angela smirked, leaning back in her chair, her eyes daring me to argue. My cousin Timothy, always eager to please, joined in. Yeah, Sam tech's for the big players. You're out of your league. I tried to explain AI could revolutionize small businesses, save jobs, create opportunities. But Angela cut me off. This is a joke, right? You're not serious. More laughter, louder this time, filled the room. Raymond finally glanced at me, his face hard. Enough, Samantha. You're embarrassing yourself. Focus on something practical, like getting married. Carol nodded, her lips tight. You're wasting everyone's time. I stood there, slides trembling in my hands, my voice gone. Timothy snickered, whispering to Angela, and I caught the words delusional and failure. That was the moment I knew they'd never see me as anything but a disappointment. I walked out, my face burning but my mind clear. I'd build my empire, and I'd do it without them. Back in my tiny apartment, I tore up those slides and started over. I had a few $1,000s from part-time jobs and a scholarship from college. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I rented a cramped office above a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, the kind of place with flickering lights and creaky floors. That's where Luminary Labs was born. I picked the name because it meant light, something my family would never give me. I worked alone, coding at night, pitching to clients by day, always under the radar. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend. The Reeds had a way of crushing anything they didn't control. If they knew I was building something, they'd find a way to sabotage it. Maybe a lawsuit, maybe a whisper to their investor friends. So I played the part they expected: Samantha, the quiet sister, the one who'd never amount to anything. At family dinners, Angela would prod. Still at that dead-end job, she'd say, her smile venomous. I'd nod, bite my tongue, and let her think she'd won. But I was learning. Every rejection, every sneer sharpened me. I studied the tech world, watched startups rise and fall, and built AI tools that could analyze data faster than anything on the market. My first client was a failing bookstore in Tacoma, drowning in debt. I spent weeks with their numbers, tweaking their inventory with my software. When their sales jumped 20% in 3 months, word spread. A bakery in Bellevue called Next, then a gym in Everett. Luminary Labs wasn't just a name anymore. It was a lifeline for businesses the Reeds would have let die. I hired my first employee, Kelly, a brilliant coder I met at a tech meetup. She thought I was just a project manager, not the founder. I signed every contract as S. Reed consultant, keeping my name out of it. Kelly was sharp loyal and never asked too many questions. "You're good at this," she'd say, handing me reports. I'd smile and change the subject. No one could know, not yet. The Reeds kept their distance except for the occasional jab. At a cousin's wedding, Timothy pulled me aside, his breath heavy with whiskey. "Heard you're still a secretary," he said, grinning. "If you need a real job, I can talk to Dad's HR team." I thanked him, my voice flat, and walked away. He didn't know I'd just closed a deal with a chain of coffee shops, saving them from bankruptcy. My software was now in 10 businesses across Washington, and I was barely 24. I remember one night sitting in that dingy office staring at a screen full of code. My phone buzzed, another text from Angela, a photo of her at some fancy gala captioned, "Living the Dream." I deleted it, turned back to my work, and made a promise. I'd keep building, keep growing, until the day they couldn't ignore me. The Reeds thought they owned success, but I was carving my own path, one deal at a time. That first big win came a year later. A Seattle-based logistics company on the brink of collapse reached out. They were desperate, facing a buyout from a firm tied to Carter Investments, my family's firm. I saw Raymond's fingerprints all over it. Lowball offers, rushed contracts, the kind of deal that'd gut a company and leave its workers jobless. I took the case, worked round the clock, and built a custom AI tool to streamline their supply chain. When their profits spiked 30% in 6 months, they turned down the buyout. Carter Investments lost millions, and no one knew I was behind it. That night, I stood outside my office, rain soaking my jacket, and felt something shift. Luminary Labs wasn't just a startup, it was my weapon. The Reeds could laugh all they wanted, but I was already ahead, moving in the shadows, waiting for the day I'd step into the light. It started with a tip from Kelly, my assistant. She walked into my office one morning, her laptop open, her voice low. "Samantha, you need to see this." She showed me an email from a client, a family-owned brewery in Olympia, begging for help. Carter Investments. My father's firm was circling, offering a buyout that'd leave the owners with pennies and their workers jobless. I recognized Raymond's playbook: lowball offers, shady contracts, and pressure to sell fast. It wasn't just business. It was manipulation, rigging the market to crush the little guys. I didn't hesitate. I flew to Olympia that week, posing as a consultant for Luminary Labs. The brewery's owner, a guy named Tom, looked defeated, his desk buried in debt notices. I spent days digging through his numbers, building an AI model to streamline his supply chain and predict demand. By the end of the month, his sales were up 15%, enough to fend off the buyout. Carter Investments walked away empty-handed, and Raymond never knew I was the one who'd stopped him. That was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, I tracked Carter Investments like a hawk. Their game was simple: target struggling businesses, offer a lifeline that was really a noose, then flip the assets for profit. A hardware store in Bellingham, a daycare in Tacoma, a tech startup in Redmond, they all got the same treatment. I reached out before my family could close the deal, offering my services as Reed consultant. My AI tools turned their losses into gains, and one by one they turned down Carter's offers. Each time I cost my family millions, and they had no clue it was me. The Reeds didn't make it easy to stay hidden. At a family barbecue the next summer, Angela cornered me by the pool, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Still fetching coffee." "Samantha," she said, her smile venomous. Timothy, lounging nearby with a beer, chimed in. "Yeah, Sam, when are you gonna get a real job?" I sipped my drink, my face calm, and said nothing. They didn't know I'd just saved a clothing boutique in Seattle from their claws, using my software to boost their online sales by 25%. My mother, Carol, watched from across the yard, her eyes narrowing, but she stayed silent as always. Keeping my secret wasn't just about pride, it was strategy. The Reeds had connections everywhere: investors, lawyers, even regulators. If they knew I was behind Luminary Labs, they'd come for me, maybe with a smear campaign or a lawsuit. So I stayed in the shadows, signing every contract as S. Reed, avoiding photos, declining interviews. Kelly was the only one who suspected I was more than a project manager. One night after a late meeting, she leaned across my desk, her eyes sharp. "Samantha, are you running this show?" I laughed it off, but her smile told me she wasn't fooled. Still, she never pushed, and I trusted her to keep quiet. By 28, Luminary Labs had grown to 3 small offices: Seattle, Spokane, and Bellevue, with a team of 10 coders and analysts, all handpicked by me. None of them knew I was the founder. To them, I was Samantha, the one who coordinated deals and crunched numbers. We were discreet, taking clients through word-of-mouth referrals, never advertising. Our reputation spread quietly. If your business was on the ropes, Luminary Labs could save it. But to the Reeds, I was still the family failure, the one they mocked at every gathering. One Christmas dinner, Angela took it further. She raised her glass, her voice dripping with fake pity. To Samantha, still loyal to her little desk job. The table laughed except for Carol, who just stared at her plate. I smiled, my pulse steady, and changed the subject. They didn't know I'd just blocked a deal that would have handed Carter Investments a chain of gyms in Portland. My AI had optimized their operations, cutting costs by 30%, and they'd walked away from Raymond's offer. Another loss for my family, another win for me. I started to see patterns in Carter Investments' moves. Raymond wasn't just buying businesses, he was rigging the game, using insider tips to tank stock prices before swooping in. It was borderline illegal, and I knew if I kept digging, I'd find proof. I hired a data analyst, a guy named Mark, to track their deals. He didn't know why, just followed my orders. Every report he sent confirmed what I suspected: Carter Investments was playing dirty, and Raymond was calling the shots. Angela, now a senior exec at the firm, was right there with him, signing off on every shady contract. I could have gone public, exposed them to the press, but that wasn't my style. I wanted to hit them where it hurt their wallet. So I kept saving businesses one after another. A pet store in Everett, a bakery in Kirkland, a software firm in Seattle. Each one was a dagger in Carter's plans. By 29, Luminary Labs had saved over 50 businesses, and I'd cost my family tens of millions. They were starting to notice something was wrong, but they couldn't pin it on me. To them, I was still the secretary, the nobody they'd written off years ago. The turning point came last spring. Kelly rushed into my office, her face tense. "Samantha, we got a call from Parker Industries, a medical supply company in Tacoma. Carter Investments is pushing a $50 million buyout, and they're desperate." I leaned back, my mind racing. This wasn't just another deal, it was massive, the kind Raymond would bet everything on. I'd seen the numbers. Parker was struggling, but their patents were gold. If Carter got their hands on it, they'd dominate the market. If I saved Parker, I'd gut their biggest plan yet. I flew to Tacoma the next day, still as S. Reed consultant. The CEO, a woman named Linda, was on edge, her office cluttered with legal papers. I sat across from her, my laptop open, and walked her through my plan: an AI system to optimize their inventory and predict market trends. She hesitated, but I showed her the numbers, real results from my past clients. "Give me 3 months," I said. She nodded, and I got to work. Day and night, I coded, tested, and tweaked while Kelly coordinated with Linda's team. By the end of the quarter, Parker's profits were up 20%, and they rejected Carter's offer. Raymond was furious, but he had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. That night, I stood on my office balcony, the Seattle skyline glowing in the distance. Luminary Labs was no longer just a company, it was a movement, saving businesses from predators like my family. But I knew the Reeds were getting suspicious. Angela had started asking questions at family events, her tone sharper than usual. "What exactly do you do at that tech place, Samantha?" she'd say, her eyes narrowing. I'd shrug, play dumb, and change the subject. But I could feel the clock ticking. The $50 million deal with Parker was my biggest move yet, and it was only a matter of time before I had to face them head on. I wasn't ready to step out of the shadows, not yet, but I was preparing. Kelly handed me a folder one morning, her voice quiet. This is everything we have on Carter Investments' next move. They're not stopping. I nodded, flipping through the pages. Raymond was planning something bigger, and I'd be there to stop it. The Reeds thought they could keep laughing at me, but I was building something they couldn't touch. Soon they'd see exactly who they'd underestimated. The morning after the gala, I walked into Luminary Labs' Seattle headquarters, my heels clicking on the polished floor. Today was the day Carter Investments was coming to negotiate a $50 million buyout of Parker Industries, the medical supply company I'd saved. They thought they were meeting some faceless CEO, not me, Samantha Reed, the sister they'd laughed off as a secretary. I wore a sharp gray suit, nothing flashy, just enough to command the room. Kelly met me at the elevator, her eyes bright. "You ready for this, Samantha?" I nodded, my pulse steady. Let's do it. The conference room on the top floor was all glass, Seattle's skyline framing the table. I took my seat at the head, a stack of files in front of me. Kelly handed out folders, each one detailing Parker's turnaround my work. At exactly 9, the doors opened. Raymond walked in first, his suit crisp, his face smug. Angela followed her heels, loud, her smile tight. Timothy trailed behind, scrolling on his phone, oblivious as always. Carol was there too, her expression blank, like she'd rather be anywhere else. They didn't recognize the room or me as a threat. Not yet. Raymond sat across from me, his voice smooth. "Let's make this quick. Carter Investments wants Parker Industries, and we're prepared to close today." Angela leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "We know Parker's weak. Our offer's generous, $50 million. Sign and we're done." I stayed silent, flipping through my files, letting them stew. Timothy looked up, confused. "Who's running this show anyway?" he muttered. I stood, my voice calm but firm. "Good morning. I'm Samantha Reed, founder and CEO of Luminary Labs, and I'll be leading this meeting." The room froze. Angela's jaw dropped, her pen slipping from her hand. Raymond's smug grin vanished, his eyes narrowing. Timothy blinked, his phone forgotten. Carol stared, her face pale. Samantha Angela sputtered, her voice sharp. "You're the CEO. That's impossible." I smiled just enough to sting. Impossible. Or just inconvenient. I slid a folder across the table. "These are Parker's latest numbers. Profits up 20% thanks to my AI tools. They're not signing your deal." Raymond's face darkened, his fingers gripping the table. "This is a stunt, Samantha. You're no CEO. You're a secretary." Before I could respond, the door opened. A woman in a black suit walked in, her briefcase heavy. "I'm Ellen Carter, attorney for Florence Reed," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here to present her will." Angela laughed, harsh and nervous. "Grandma's will. What does that have to do with this?" Raymond leaned back, his eyes cold. "Get to the point." Ellen opened her briefcase, pulling out a sealed document. "Florence Reed, founder of Carter Investments, passed away last year. Her will finalized before her death names Samantha Reed as the inheritor of 60% of Carter Investments shares." The room went silent, the air thick. Angela's face twisted, her voice rising. 60%. To her, that's a lie. Samantha must have tricked her. Carol gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Timothy just stared, his mouth open. I stayed calm, my eyes locked on Angela. Tricked her. Or maybe Grandma saw something you never did. Ellen continued unfazed. Florence included a letter. She wrote that Samantha's vision and integrity made her the only one fit to lead Carter Investments forward. She'd been watching Luminary Labs for years, tracking your work, Samantha. I felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't flinch. Florence had believed in me when no one else did. Raymond found his voice, his tone icy. "This is absurd. I'm the CEO. Those shares are mine." I leaned forward, my voice sharp. "Not anymore, Dad. With 60% I can control the board. But I'm giving you a choice sign, a fair partnership with Parker Industries, or I'll take Carter Investments apart piece by piece." Angela slammed her hand on the table. "You're bluffing." You're nobody, Samantha. I slid another folder across my eyes, never leaving hers. Nobody. Then explain why I've blocked your deals for years. The brewery in Olympia, the hardware store in Bellingham, the daycare in Tacoma, all saved by Luminary Labs. By me. Timothy's face went white, his phone slipping to the table. Carol looked away, her hands trembling. Raymond's jaw tightened, his eyes searching for an out. Ellen spoke again, her voice cutting through. The will is airtight, witnessed and notarized. Samantha's shares are effective immediately. Angela turned to Raymond, her voice desperate. Dad, do something. She can't take our company. I stood, my tone cold. I don't want your company, Angela. I want it to stop preying on the weak. Sign the partnership or I'll use my shares to vote you all out. The room was silent, their faces a mix of shock and fury. Kelly stepped forward, placing a contract in front of Raymond. This is the deal, I said. Parker stays independent and Carter invests as a partner, not a predator. You have until tomorrow. Raymond stared at the contract, his hands clenched. Angela's eyes burned into me, her voice low. You think you've won? This isn't over, Samantha. I met her gaze unflinching. It's over when I say it is. I turned to Ellen, nodding. Read them the rest. Ellen opened Florence's letter, her voice clear. Samantha, I built Carter Investments to create, not destroy. You're the only one who understands that. Don't let them break you. My chest tightened, but I kept my face steady. Florence's words were a shield, a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. Raymond broke the silence, his voice strained. You hid this for years. Why? I looked at him, my voice even. Because you never listened, Dad. You laughed when I had ideas, told me to get married, called me a failure. I built Luminary Labs to prove you wrong, not for your approval, but for me. Carol's eyes flicked up, but she said nothing. Timothy shifted, his voice weak. Sam? How did you even do this? I ignored him, turning to Angela. You called my dreams a pipe dream, Angela. Now they're your reality. She flinched, her face red, but she had no comeback. The room felt heavy, their defeat sinking in. I picked up my files. My voice final. Sign by tomorrow or I take control. Your choice. I walked out, Kelly at my side, leaving the Reeds staring at the contract, their world crumbling. Outside, I stood by the glass windows, Seattle's rain streaking the panes. Kelly touched my arm, her voice soft. You okay, Samantha? I nodded, but Florence's letter echoed in my mind. She'd seen me when no one else had. The Reeds thought they could keep me small, but I'd just turned their empire upside down. This wasn't the end, not yet. But for the first time, I held the power and they knew it. I walked back into the conference room, rain still streaking the glass walls. I took my seat at the head of the table, my voice calm but sharp. You've had time to think. Sign the deal or I use my 60% of Carter Investments to take control. Your call. Angela slammed her fist on the table, her voice shaking. You're destroying our family, Samantha. This is betrayal. I met her eyes, unflinching. Betrayal. You called me a nobody, Angela. You laughed when I had dreams. That's the real betrayal. Raymond leaned forward, his tone cold. You think you can just walk in and take my company? I built Carter Investments. I slid a folder across the table, my voice steady. You built it on Grandma's vision, Dad. She chose me to carry it forward, not you. Carol's head snapped up, her eyes wide, but she said nothing. Timothy cleared his throat, his voice weak. Sam, maybe we can work this out. No need to burn bridges. I turned to him, my gaze hard. Work it out, Timothy. Like when you told me to get a real job, I'm done playing nice. Angela stood her chair, scraping the floor, her voice rising. You tricked Grandma into giving you those shares. You've been scheming for years, haven't you? I laughed, sharp and cold. Scheming? I built Luminary Labs from nothing while you mocked me. Grandma saw what you couldn't, a leader. Kelly stepped forward, placing another copy of the contract in front of Raymond. This partnership keeps Parker independent and Carter profitable, I said. Sign it or I call a board meeting tomorrow and vote you out. Raymond's face twitched, his fingers hovering over the pen. Angela grabbed his arm, her voice desperate. Dad, don't. She's bluffing. But Raymond's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something new. Resignation. He picked up the pen, his hand steady, and signed the contract. The room was silent, the scratch of the pen deafening. Angela sank back into her chair, her face pale. Carol's hands trembled, but she stayed quiet, her eyes darting between us. Timothy looked away, his shoulders slumped. I signed my name, Samantha Reed, CEO of Luminary Labs, next to Raymond sealing the deal. Parker Industries would stay free, and Carter Investments would play fair whether they liked it or not. I stood gathering my files, my voice firm. This isn't about winning, Angela. It's about doing what's right. I could take Carter Investments, but I don't want it. I want no part of a family that only values me when I'm useful. Angela's eyes flashed, her voice low. You'll regret this, Samantha. You're throwing us away. I looked at her, my tone final. You threw me away first. Raymond spoke, his voice tired. What now, Samantha? You've got your deal. What's next? I paused, my hand on the folder. I'm done with the Reeds. I built Luminary Labs to prove I could not to beg for your approval. I'm walking away for good. Carol's breath caught, her voice barely a whisper. Samantha, don't do this. I turned to her, my eyes steady. You never stood up for me, Mom. Not once. I'm choosing myself now. Timothy tried again, his voice soft. Sam, we're family. We can fix this. I shook my head, my voice calm. Family doesn't laugh at your dreams, Timothy. Family doesn't call you a failure. I turned to Kelly, nodding. She opened the door and I walked out, the contract signed, my steps light. The Reeds sat frozen, their empire no longer theirs to control. Outside, I stood by the glass windows, the city below buzzing with life. Kelly joined me, her voice quiet. You did it, Samantha. They signed. I nodded, my chest tight but clear. Florence's letter from the meeting echoed in my mind. She'd believed in me, seen what the Reeds never could. I'd spent years hiding, building, fighting, but now I was free. Not just from their mockery, but from their world. I thought of Angela's venom, Raymond's arrogance, Carol's silence, Timothy's weak apologies. They'd shaped me, but they didn't own me. Luminary Labs was mine, built from my own grit and vision. I didn't need their name or their approval. I had something bigger, a purpose. The $50 million deal was just the start. I was ready to step out of the shadows, not for them, but for everyone they'd overlooked, everyone they'd called a nobody. This wasn't the end, it was my beginning. 3 weeks after the Parker Industries deal, the headlines hit. Luminary Labs secures $50 million partnership redefining tech, the news ticker read. My name, Samantha Reed, CEO, flashed across screens, no longer hidden. The Reeds stayed silent, their empire bruised. Carter Investments' stock dipped 10% while Luminary Labs soared. I sat in my Seattle office watching the city hum below and felt something new, not triumph, but freedom. I'd built this from nothing and no one could take it away. The calls started pouring in, interviews, partnerships, speaking gigs. I turned most down. I didn't need fame. I needed purpose. But one invitation caught my eye, a women's tech conference in Seattle focused on startups. They wanted me to speak, to share my story. Kelly handed me the invite, her smile wide. This is your moment, Samantha. I nodded, my mind already racing. This wasn't about me, it was about everyone who'd been overlooked. The conference hall was packed, the lights bright, the crowd buzzing. I stepped onto the stage, a simple black dress replacing my usual suit, my hands steady. The plaque in my hand read, Tech Innovator of 2025, but it wasn't the award that mattered. I took a breath, my voice clear. 8 years ago, my family laughed when I pitched an AI startup. They called it a pipe dream, told me to stick to typing emails, said I'd never make it. I built Luminary Labs in a tiny office alone because I believed in something bigger. The room went quiet, every eye on me. Success isn't about awards or headlines, I continued. It's about the single mom who emailed me last week saying she started her own business because of my story. It's about the assistant who walked into a boardroom and took charge. It's about proving them wrong, not for revenge, but for you. The applause started soft, then roared the sound filling my chest. I stepped off the stage, my heart full, knowing I'd reached someone. That night, an email from Angela landed in my inbox. It was short, her words stiff. Samantha, I was wrong. You did what I couldn't. I'm sorry. I read it, my finger hovering over the reply button, but I closed the laptop. Her apology came too late, and I didn't need it. The Reeds had made their choice years ago. Raymond's silence, Carol's cold stares, Timothy's weak excuses. They'd built a world where I was invisible, but I'd built a better one without them. A week later, Kelly handed me a pale envelope. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter from Florence written before she passed. Samantha, it began. I saw your fire when no one else did. Carter Investments was my dream, but you're my legacy. Keep building, not for them, but for those who need you. I folded it carefully, tucking it into my desk drawer, my eyes stinging. Grandma had known even when I doubted myself. I didn't keep the letter to gloat. It was a reminder my fight wasn't just about me. The next month, I launched the Luminary Fund, a venture to back women-led startups across the Northwest. At the first meeting, I looked around the room, former baristas, teachers, single mothers, all with dreams bigger than their circumstances. They weren't just founders. They were pioneers like I'd been. I shared my story not to brag, but to show them what was possible. Their eyes lit up, and I saw myself in them, hungry, determined, ready to rewrite the rules. The Reeds faded into the background. Raymond sent a curt email congratulating me on the fund, but I didn't reply. Carol called once, her voice shaky, asking to meet. I declined politely but firmly. Timothy texted offering a fresh start, but I left it unread. They weren't my family anymore, not in the way that mattered. My family was the women in that room, the ones building from nothing, the ones who'd been told they couldn't. I stood on my office balcony one evening, the Seattle skyline glowing against the dusk. Luminary Labs wasn't just a company, it was a movement, a light for those the world ignored. I thought of Angela's laugh, Raymond's dismissal, Carol's silence. They'd tried to dim me, but I'd burned brighter. My legacy wasn't the $50 million deal or the headlines. It was the freedom I gave others to dream, to fight, to win. What would you do if your family tried to bury your dreams? Share your story. Below, hit subscribe, and join us for more tales of resilience and redemption.